get into it. Okay. Hello. I hope you guys are all doing well. Happy lockdown Wednesday. Hump day, nearly through the week. It's actually been my first week of lockdown. I did 7 weeks of lockdown last year when I was living in Sydney, and I'm not going to lie, I think I forgot how hard it is until I was in it day to day. So thank you for being here. Thank you for joining live. I've mentioned to Baz since the last workshop we did on protein, how I really wanted to give more practical tips around navigating the supermarket shelves, the shopping aisles, and essentially stocking your fridge and pantry with staples that are affordable and really easy to source. So I'm not into expensive superfoods or organic foods or anything that's kind of hard to find and come by. When I started brainstorming some ideas for tonight's workshop, I just kept coming back to my same philosophy around food. And that's that I didn't just want to give you guys kind of the nerdy, here are the really simple meal swaps with all the brands that you need. Because when I do that, I'd have to give you 30, 40, 50 different simple food swaps in terms of tomato sauces and barbecue sauces and specific breads. And then if you go to the supermarket and the brand that I've recommended isn't there, you're kind of stuffed. Or I find people end up spending a lot of money on all these fancy apps and just stuff that they don't need. So in tonight's session, I'm actually going to walk you through how to understand and read nutrition labels, because I feel like when you can do that, you'll be really armed and ready to take on any food that you currently eat or your kids eat and find a healthier swap. Does that make sense? Can I get a little nod if you guys get that? Yeah? Cool. So just to kind of skim over Nutrition 101, because I know a bunch of you guys have already attended my first workshop, keep in mind that when you eat well, you're fueling your body. So I often talk about how we want to eat whole foods. As a naturopath and nutritionist, I am really passionate about just teaching simple, good food, and whole foods is just that. Whole foods is real food in its whole form. So it's just eating foods that have undergone minimal food processing. So something that, again, is a good reminder is the less ingredients that are in the food, the better. You know, and I shared a great example today. I'm going to show it to you. If you were to compare two different brands of wrap breads, one had 14 ingredients and one had 4, which brand of wrap bread do you think is going to be more natural? Right? And it's naturally going to be the brand that has the less ingredients. So that's a good one to think of. The less ingredients it has, the better, because real food doesn't require a whole bunch of ingredients. Another little thing that I thought is really important to cover off is that when we're talking about nutrition, I'm talking about your macronutrients. So the human body can't produce carbohydrates, fats, or protein. They're your 3, I nearly said 4, they're your 3 macros, right? Carbs, fats, and protein. Every single meal, we need to eat a nice little combo of all 3 of those. And yes, I spoke in my last workshops a lot about protein, and it's just because as Baz health and fitness members, we're already moving our bodies, right? And so there's a pretty good chance that a lot of us may be struggling with getting in the required amount of protein we need in terms of muscle health, recovery, muscle growth, muscle protein synthesis, or even, and I'm not just talking, I think so often it's easy to think about fat burning or bulking up. Yes, protein can do both of those, but that's kind of missing the point. So when I'm talking about bringing new staples into your fridge or pantry, just keep in mind that I'm kind of doing a deep dive now. So think of Nutrition 101. You've got your 3 macronutrients, your carbs, fats, and protein. We need to eat those at every meal. And then within your macronutrients, you have what's called your micronutrients, which is your vitamins and minerals, like your iron, your magnesium, etc. So when you're eating whole foods, you're eating real food. That's just veggies, fruits, berries, nuts, seeds, seafood, meats if you're open to it, legumes, lentils, etc. And that's all well and good, but that's a little disjointed from real life because a lot of us are busy, we're working from home, we have kids. So we need to understand how to make simple swaps. So when you walk into any supermarket, before I start giving you some really hot tips, and as I said, I will still share some common brands with you, but when you walk into any supermarket, I always say you kind of just want to hang around the border of the supermarket, right? You kind of walk into, let's picture Coles at Browra. You walk in, you grab your trolley, you pretty much just want maybe the deli, the fruit and veg aisle. You might skim around to the last couple of aisles, but a lot of the stuff that lines the shelves in the middle aisles, I usually argue that it's not really food. It's usually heavily processed. There's usually a lot of ingredients. When you're trying to understand what the heck you're eating and what's in the food, I usually give you guidance around one, just having a look at how many ingredients are in there. So let's say you're buying something like rice crackers. Good quality rice crackers should probably only have a few ingredients. There should be rice. They usually need to use some type of oil, and then maybe there should be some salt, right? Some sea salt or something. There shouldn't be seasoning and herbs and artificial colors and additives and things like that. So best way to get familiar with what foods you're putting in your trolley and storing in your home is just to turn it over. And when you see the ingredient list, they always list the top ingredient that's in that packaged food down to the least ingredient. When we are looking at sticking with more whole foods, something to keep in mind, they usually add 3 different things into packaged foods to make it taste better and look more appealing. Sugar, because it's delicious, salt, and also additives. When I talk about additives, they want to make the food survive for longer. So I recently ran a sourdough workshop, and something that I was teaching my sourdough members was that good quality bread, which contains 3 ingredients, right? It's water, it's salt, and it's flour. It should really only last for 24 hours, maybe 48. And then it kind of starts to go, not so much manky, but it goes kind of hard, right? Because it doesn't contain preservatives. If you buy a bread and you notice that it lasts sitting on your bench or in your pantry for 5, 6, 7, 8 days, it's no good. There's going to be preservatives in it. Best way to see if there's preservatives in your packaged foods, flick it over. As I said, skim the ingredients. Whenever you see numbers mean preservatives. And they can be numbered from anything from 100 right up to 900. So kind of keep that in mind. So as I said, they often are adding in sugar, salt, and preservatives. When it comes to the world of sugar, because we are now living in a world that shouldn't be carb phobic, I feel like a lot of people still panic around carbs. We need carbs. Carbohydrates are delicious to start with. And again, I know I covered this in the protein workshop, but I always like to remind you, if you don't eat the right amount of carbohydrates that your body needs, particularly after a BAS session, what happens is your body can kind of outsmart you, and it will convert protein into carbohydrates. So I always say, eat the carbs, enjoy the carbs. When I'm talking about carbs, I'm largely talking about veggies and fruits, as well as really good quality whole grains. But most of your veggies, you know, is starchy veggies. So it's white potato, sweet potato, pumpkin, etc. And so we do need natural sugars, but the sugars I'm talking about that are in your packaged and processed foods are processed sugars. They're refined sugars. So my general rule of thumb, and feel free to scribble this down, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a little chat box at the end and get everyone to pop their email in, and I can send you this info. When you're looking at the ingredient list, you ideally want less than 15 grams of sugar per 100 grams across the board. So as I said, whether it's rice crackers, whether it's chocolate, whether it's ice cream, whether it's granola, that's kind of a good rule of thumb. So less than 15 grams of sugar per 100 grams. Your daily recommendation of how much sugar we should be consuming, and this includes natural sugars, is actually only about 5 to 6 teaspoons of sugar. So you can burn through your daily recommendation of sugar pretty quickly if you're not just flicking over the back and reading through your ingredient list. So that's the sugar side of things. I want to touch quickly on the salt, and then I'm going to get into my favorite topic, which is preservatives, because hopefully at the end of this call, no one feels overwhelmed. You guys just feel really empowered and informed, and you swing open your pantry doors and you start trying to find what packaged foods you may want to start replacing and which ones contain a lot of sugar, a lot of salt, and too many preservatives. So when it comes to salt, salt, like sugar, is actually okay in small amounts. The human body needs salt. I am obsessed with everyone having enough water. So before we talk about those macronutrients, I always say water is the most important nutrient on the planet. You know, and the best example I can give, and my 6-year-old is really annoying, and he'll remind his sisters of this. He'll say, don't you know you can survive for weeks without food, but you can only survive for a few days without water? And he's actually right, you know, so we need water. The human body can make a little bit of water, but not much. So you want to be drinking good quality water, because water grabs the nutrients from the food you're eating that's cruising around in the blood, and then it pushes it into the cells to nourish the cells so that the cells can actually get the most out of the food that you're eating. So water is super duper important, because even if you're eating all the right foods, if you're dehydrated, then you're not really going to get the benefit of the food, if that makes sense. So I often say water and salt are like the ultimate duo. Kind of think of them as sisters. They work together. And when I talk about paying attention to the salt that's in your packaged food, I just want to stop and give full praise to good quality unrefined salt. So there's 2 types of salt I'm talking about here, because it's a bit confusing. You've got your table salt, which is refined salt. So this is where they take the actual mineral, they apply a lot of heat to it, and instead of it containing over 80 minerals, you're left with a product that is pretty nutrient poor, and you're left with 2 minerals, sodium chloride. And that's our table salt as we know it. And that's the salt that's pretty damaging. That's the salt that is not good for the human body in terms of blood pressure, insulin levels, digestive issues, etc. It's what they add into a lot of your packaged and processed foods. Keep in mind the other salt's really important, and I encourage you to consume it. That is unrefined sea salt or pink Himalayan salt. Most of us require at least 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of unrefined salt a day. And as I said, salt helps your body actually absorb water. And that's the stuff that you can just add into your cooking, into your dressings, etc. So when I'm talking about, I don't even want to use the word nasty salt, but I'm going to, just so you can kind of stay with me on this. When I'm talking about the salt, it will usually say sodium on the packaging when you're trying to decipher nutrition labels, right? So the amount of sodium that we should all be having each day is kind of no more than 2,000 milligrams. It's up to about 2,300 milligrams. And so I wanted to give you a bit of an idea. I was doing a quick Google search earlier today, because I'm not really familiar with the amount of sodium that's in lean cuisine meals, but one lean cuisine meal can have 700 to about 1,800 milligrams of sodium per meal, which is half to nearly your full day's worth of added sodium. And that's just in one meal. And that's a meal that is technically nutritionist approved, and you kind of think you're doing the right thing. So pay attention to the sodium that they've added into packaged foods. And as I said, in an ideal world, you want no more than about 300 milligrams of sodium per 100 grams. But keep in mind, each day you need 2,000 milligrams. So as I said, if you're having one serve of something and it's 500 or 1,000 milligrams of sodium, you want to be aware that that's a pretty big chunk of your daily sodium requirement. The third thing to consider when you are trying to work out what the heck you're eating and what's in your nutrition labels is additives. As I said, they use additives in most packaged foods because it extends the shelf life, right? So it's used as a preservative, also because it's visually appealing, particularly when they add in a lot of food colorings, like your red food coloring, your blue food coloring, etc. And the texture. You know, some of your lollies, they're really smooth. When you're having like vanilla ice cream, you really want it to be bright white. They often add in yellow food dye into vanilla ice cream just because no one wants to eat dull looking vanilla ice cream. You want it to be bright white, right? So you'll start to notice this, but as I said, if I had to pick my one thing that I would encourage every adult and child to be conscious of reducing or avoiding altogether, it would be food colorings. Food colorings are used in a lot of products in Australia. In most European countries, they're either banned completely to use food colorings, or if they do add in any food colorings, there's these big warning labels, right, that come up in black, and it says, warning, can cause hyperactivity, respiratory issues, etc. So it kind of goes through all the potential health concerns. But food colorings are linked, and the FDA even state that some food colorings are carcinogenic. They are related to a lot of issues with immune issues, digestive issues, bloating. You've got headaches, migraines, skin issues. They're terrible for asthmatics. As I said, going back to the respiratory issues, also can cause behavioral issues, brain fog, concentration, poor memory, etc. The list goes on and on. So, yeah, as I said, if you're turning it over, quickly check the sugar and the salt or sodium and see if there's numbers. And the worst numbers, the biggest offenders, are your food colors, particularly 100. So your food colors are listed from 100 to 199. And what's really frightening is some of your food colors can even be organic. And I was telling someone about this today. There's a food coloring in particular, my most hated one, which is called 160B. And, you know, my kids even know if we go to the beach, you know, in summer, if they want to get an ice block, they're pretty good about just running their eye through and determining if this, I can let them eat food colorings every so often, but not this one, not 160B. As I said, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it should be banned, and I truly believe it will be banned and will be made illegal at some point. We're just not quite there yet to back it up from a science perspective. But lost my train of thought before I went on a rant about ice blocks. Help me, where was I? Anyway, it's going to come back to me. So food colorings, do try to steer clear of them. The other big thing to pay attention to is your nitrates. So nitrates is in a lot of your processed meats, and I am one for convenience. To be honest, my kids love ham and salami. I buy it. I just do my best to buy free range and nitrate free. So you will see really good quality ham and salami you can buy without nitrates. Nitrates are a preservative, and again, they are linked with a number of hormonal issues, fertility issues, gut dysfunction, digestive weakness, etc. So Harris Farm, for example, sell a huge range of nitrate-free meats that you can buy. And as I said, salami, sausages are a classic one. Again, turn over the back of your sausages and count how many preservatives are in there. We only recently moved to the Southern Highlands, and my husband, it was a Saturday night, I said to him, I'm killing for a steak. Like, you have to go find a butcher, find us a Scotch fillet. And so he came home and he goes to me, you won't believe how much 2 Scotch fillet costs. And I was like, I don't know, $50. He's like, no more. Anyway, he found a butcher and he bought 2 Scotch fillet steaks that were charging $62. And I said, okay. And he's like, oh, they're grass-fed, they're preservative-free. Of course it's preservative-free. I mean, it's straight Scotch fillet. And I said, what about sausages? So he asked for preservative-free sausages. And the butcher said to him, sorry, you can't buy preservative-free sausages. And my husband said, well, that's weird because my wife's been buying preservative-free sausages from another butcher for years, and you can even get them from Coles. And she said, no, we can't do them. And he was getting in the car, and one of the other butchers from the shop ran out and said, no, mate, we can do preservative-free sausages. So my husband kind of left, and he gave me the card, and he's like, you can call them. I was like, I'm not calling them for preservative-free sausages. Who knows what they'll charge me? So I found my most local butcher, and I walked in, and I felt like a bit of an idiot, to be honest. I was like, sorry, just wondering, do you do grass-fed sausages? They need to be preservative-free. And he looked at me like I was the idiot. He's like, of course I do preservative-free sausages. I said, really? He's like, yeah, do you want them thick, thin? I'll make them up for you. I'll make them on Monday. He said, the only issue is because they're preservative-free, you'll need to pick them up the day I make them and freeze them within 24 hours, or I'll freeze them for you. In the end, I ordered 3 kilos of preservative-free sausages. It was $14 a kilo, which is super duper cheap. And as I said, I can then use that, have them in the freezer. I can use that for sausage sandwiches. I often take off the outside layer of the sausages. You can add them to pizzas, any which way you want. So it's pretty cool when you become aware of the preservative-free options and you start asking, you'll start to see that they're kind of everywhere. So they're kind of my top 3 rules, I guess, before I give you some real life examples of how to understand what you're looking for when you are just trying to create new pantry staples and fridge staples. I'm going to share with you a little thing I put together today. I wanted to give you a really easy visual example of a healthy swap in terms of wrap bread. You can see the wrap bread on the left is marketed as a spinach wrap bread, and it contains 12 ingredients and 10 additives. You can see the wrap bread on the right contains 4 ingredients and 0 additives. So on the left, we've got spinach wraps. Now I like to be clear, there's no spinach in there. They add in a spinach dried powder seasoning, and they actually make green food dye by using 2 food dyes. So they use 2 food colorings to make them green so that you think what you're eating tastes like spinach. So as you can see, they use wheat flour, they use water, vegetable oil, mineral salt. So you've got 2 preservatives there, 450 and 500. You've got salt, sugar, you've got spinach and herb seasoning. You then have 2 food colorings. You can see they're both in the 100s, 102 and 133. You've got an emulsifier, so another additive, vegetable gums, 2 more additives, acidity regulator, and then 2 additional preservatives. So per wrap, you are having 10 additives. Compared to the wrap on the right, which is a mountain bread wrap, which is literally made from 2 types of flour. You've got your rye flour and your wheat flour, water, and sea salt. So see what I mean, how if I just said to you guys, okay, this is the brand of wraps that I want you to buy, and I want you to buy them every week. You go to Coles or Woolies and they're sold out of the mountain bread wraps. You'd kind of be like, well, what am I going to buy? So that's just a very simple way for you to see that all you need to do is flick it over. And to be honest, if you look on the left, you just see numbers. That's not even food. That's like some nasty product that you want to put back on the shelf. I have a very funny story to tell you actually. In the last lockdown, so last year, my husband went and did the grocery shop, and which I was very grateful for, and he came home and I saw he bought these wraps. He bought these exact wraps. And I was so confused, and I was like, darling, thank you so much for doing the shopping. I really appreciate it. You know, whole sandwich approach. So really positive, great work. I'm really confused. Why did you buy these wraps? And he was like, well, you buy them. And I said, yeah, I only buy them to take to workshops to show people what not to buy. And he was like, oh, well, I bought 3 packets of them. And I said, I can't, you got to put it in the bin. He's like, I can't put it in the bin. That's so wasteful. And I was like, it's not even food. Like, look at that ingredient list. That is not food. Anyway, needless to say, I did keep 1 for future workshops, but that is a classic example where you don't need to understand what all these preservatives are. As I said, I thought how boring if I sit here and go through preservatives and food colors. All you need to know is that is so far from a whole food. It's so far from real food. There's a really great little meme, and it's like, don't eat anything your great grandmother wouldn't eat. And I think, isn't that just so true, right? We just need to go back to eating simple, good quality food. So, as I said, I've got some more little options here to show you. I wanted to give you some brands just to get you started. These are my top snack options that I have in my pantry, in my emergency stash drawer. Hold on. I'm just going to, I think it stopped sharing. One ticky. Let me just figure out. Just going to move. I've got way too many things open. I'm one of those people. I have 50 trillion tabs open on my screen. And it's freaking
out. See when you share that screen.
Could you see it?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do that again then. Thanks. So hold on. Oh, now I've closed it. No, that's not it. I've seen you. Sorry, you guys can look at how grubby and dirty my desktop is. Yeah, here we go. So can you see that? Okay, cool. So as I said, I do have packaged snacks. This, I mean, I would love to always think that I always have bliss balls fresh in the freezer and I always have fruit and handfuls of nuts. Sometimes I don't. I can honestly tell you, when I'm making school lunch boxes, I will usually have to put in wrap bread or a muesli bar or something that you see here. As you can see, with all of these products, the key thing to keep in mind is that there's very few ingredients. So with this seaweed, it's literally seaweed and you have some salt or seasoning. With these protein balls, you'll see there's 4 or 5 protein balls. Protein balls is a big one to pay attention to. They often add in food colorings. Nuts. I'm a big fan of yogurt pouches. I know they're not ideal for the environment, but I do find them very effective. Yogurt is an easy protein win. And again, I think for a lot of kids, that's a really good option. Cobb's popcorn isn't ideal. I don't love the oil they use, but it's still minimal ingredients. They're still not nasty preservatives. So again, in the scheme of things, I usually have a stash of some type of popcorn like that in my pantry. You can see here I've got the roasted chickpeas. I don't know if you guys have tried those. They are addictive. Another option to make them at home is you literally get a tin of chickpeas, you rinse them, you want to dry them. I usually use like a clean tea towel or a Scott towel. I dry them, and then you get happy adding on lots of different herbs and spices. I usually do a bit of olive oil, garlic powder, paprika, cinnamon, etc. You pop them in the oven and you roast them for 20 or 30 minutes, and they come out and they taste like little chickpea chips. They're delicious. Rice cakes, again, kind of like eating air. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm just eating rice cakes, you know, you could very easily eat half a packet or a full packet and you won't have even noticed. And it's because all you're eating there is carbohydrates. It's just straight sugar. There's no protein to keep you satiated, to help regulate blood sugar levels, to make you feel satisfied and like you've actually eaten. But if you were to have that with some dip or something like that, it's a great option. Muesli bars, again, is in an ideal world, we're making muesli bars from scratch, but I think these are one of the best store-bought snack options you can have in your pantry. They're the Carmen's fruit-free muesli bars. And again, as I said, I find a lot of kids love them. The last snack that I often have is some type of veggie crisp. These mushroom chips are quite addictive, but again, they're preservative-free. So I will send you this list and you can find this list on my website, but this is just there for ideas, because now you know the rule, the hot tip of the 3 things you want to know before you buy any new pantry staple or fridge staple is how much sugar's in there, because ideally we want less than 15 grams per 100 grams. how much salt or sodium is in there. Your daily recommendation is sitting around 2,000 milligrams. So we want a heck of a lot less than that, ideally around 300 milligrams per serve. And the third thing is, how many numbers can you see on the packet? Because in an ideal world, we have minimal numbers. And if we do have numbers, we really don't want the colors, which is 100 to 199. And just pay attention to, there's a couple I'm going to show you. And then I'll move on and answer some questions. We've also got, let me move that. I've also got a few other labels. So as I said, I've been through this. Your 4 tips for choosing healthy swaps. You're going for minimal ingredients. You know that. Less ingredients are better. You're low sugar. You're low sodium. And as I said, you're reading the labels. The worst, most offensive preservative is your food coloring, which is your annatto color. This is the red-orange coloring that's often added. You've also got 2 other key additives that you want to try to avoid. You've got calcium propionate 282. This one is often found in breads, wraps. It's found in things that are doughy, so cakes, pastries, etc. And then you've got sulfur dioxide, which is 220. And the really crappy thing about sulfur dioxide is you often think you're doing the right thing or making the right choice. You know, you might be buying things like dried fruit, like dried apricots or sultanas or dried prunes, or you might be buying like a healthy slice with like a coconut or something in it. Sulfur dioxide is in a lot of fresh fruits and also dried fruit. So sulfur dioxide, yes, it's natural and it comes from nature, but they often spray things like grapes very heavily in sulfur dioxide. Sulfur dioxide is kind of cool in the way that it works is, you know, if you have a big bunch of grapes, the inside grapes will start to go moldy. Do you know what I mean? After a while. But when they spray the sulfur dioxide, it ensures that mold doesn't grow. So pay attention. Next time you see some grapes, just stop and have a little look. And it often says on a bag of grapes, may contain sulfur dioxide. This is why a lot of people that drink wine can start to get headaches pretty quickly. And I'm not talking they've had a bottle and they're hungover. I mean, they get a headache even after one glass, or they often get a rash, the rash that's here. And that's usually quite a common reaction to the sulfur because of the wine. I mean, you're having grapes which are sprayed with this preservative. As I said, this preservative is found really commonly in dried apricots. Best example I can give you, if you go to like a health food shop or the farmers markets and you buy good quality dried apricots, they are this like manky brown color. They are not appetizing at all, but they're really juicy and delicious. When you buy dried apricots and they look really pretty and they're orange, they're only orange because of the sulfur dioxide. So again, just turn your ingredients over, even if you think it's healthy, and run your eye through. But as I said, if I had to pick 3, it would be those 3, but the biggest one to focus on is colors. Now, I hope that's helped. What I would love for you guys to do is, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and fire away, because there's quite a few of us on here.
I have a question.
Yes.
Hi. So with the nitrates, I've noticed that when you buy stuff that's allegedly nitrate free, it's often got something from celery, I think, added, which still seems to be nitrates. So I'm wondering if that's actually still okay or if it's just as bad for you.
Such a good question. You're right. When they take out and that's such a good example. It's like often gluten-free foods, right? When you take out gluten, you wonder, what are they putting in? Because usually if you take out something, you need to add something back in. It's certainly better. We are moving now towards a lot more options with nitrate free. So really good quality ones won't contain any type of nitrates, including the celery option. They will just have a much shorter shelf life, or fridge life, whatever you want to call it, best before date. So it's a step in the right direction. I'm pretty sure the brand, is it Primo, I'm pretty sure no, it's Don's. Don's now do like a naturals range. And when I stopped to look at it, I was impressed in the sense they're moving in the right direction. I think I could still see some holes in it.
Okay, thanks.
And I guess with processed meat, it's very salty. And, you know, you would know, like, you would often know that, especially around Christmas, if you eat a lot of ham or if your kids eat ham, they get really thirsty. And typically, too, it's the processed meats are very high in the sodium. So it's another thing to be aware of. Even if you're getting it and it's, you know, nitrate free, you still wouldn't want to have it it's not kind of your everyday food.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Anything else, guys? Has this been helpful? Do you feel like it was kind of too nitty-gritty with some of the recommendations around grams and what to pay attention to, or is that useful?
I think that's useful. Can I just ask, like, is Baker's Delight bread not good for you, or is it full of sugar?
Do you know what? If I actually had to pick my favorite bread that's mostly preservative, that has some really good preservative-free options, it would actually be the Coles bread over Baker's Delight. Baker's Delight's okay. The best store-bought options, as I said, if you are really just wanting to start with reducing preservatives, I would stick with the mountain bread wraps that I showed before. There's a really good bread range called Bill's, which you'll now notice it's sold at Coles at Bra and a lot of your Coles and Woolies. They do fruit loaf, they do multigrain, they do white. They're sourdough breads, and it's only real food. There is no preservatives whatsoever. But as I said, if I needed to grab something, and particularly if you're just starting out with reducing preservatives, like if you fed a kid, you know, the Bill's sourdough, they might be a bit like, what are you doing? Whereas some of the Coles bread is preservative free. So I would actually say go there. A lot of the bakeries add in preservatives, bread so again, even if they state they're sourdough, they'll often add in a bread improver. So when they say sourdough, they don't give it the full time to ferment, because we know with our grains are pretty hard for the body to break down. So the recommendation is that if you can soak, sprout, or ferment your grains, it's much better. They're almost pre-digested. So the live bacteria and yeast, they start to chew on and break down the natural sugars that's within the grain, right? So they're naturally lower sugar, they're naturally lower gluten. So, you know, often we think we're doing the right thing and we might go to the bakery and we might buy, you know, sourdough options or, you know, soaked grain, whatever it is, but they don't allow it the full traditional fermentation period of 12 or 24 hours. They have to speed up that process because they've got mass production, so to speak. So yeah, I know for a fact Baker's Delight do the bread improvers, which I don't think is ideal. You can get better options in your supermarket shelves. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Again, Woolworths now do like really good quality sourdoughs, like it's the Sonoma range. Do you know what I mean? So again, if you want to get more traditional grains, the grains that have been fermented, which, as I said, just means they've been pre-digested. The starches have already started to get broken down into simpler sugars, etc. Yeah, your supermarkets are pretty good these days. Any more questions around kids too? Because I know a lot of us are stuck with our little angels at the moment 24/7, and some of their eating habits can be quite tricky, especially when we're trying to switch to more additive-free options. Does anyone have any specific questions around kids? I mean, a lot of this information is for both kids and adults, but I'm just wondering if I've covered enough there. Cool. I'm going to get a big head thinking that I've covered the basics and more. What I might do from here is, as I said, I will email you through some of these like little reminders, also the simple meal swaps, and then I might even just send you through, you know, my top 15 brands. As an example, you know, the other day I was a bit stuck Cerise Organics, which you'll start to notice now, but they're a New Zealand-based company, and I find them so useful when I'm trying to make a really simple swap, like a tomato sauce. I was trying to just find a good quality tomato sauce. I found the Cerise Organic one, and again, because I trust the brand, I almost could have not turned the ingredient list over, but I did, and I saw it was over 80% of the ingredients that were in there were tomatoes. Now, if you buy a typical store-bought pretty nasty tomato sauce, only 50% of it, if that, would be tomatoes. Majority of it would be sugar and preservatives. So I think too, when you have a couple of your favorite brands that are in the health food or aisle of your supermarket, it helps when you've got a trustworthy, reliable brand, as I said, to replace your pantry and fridge staples. Because I usually say you don't want to take something away if you can't replace it with something. So, margarine's a classic option. It's heavily processed. It's one molecule away from plastic. I do not recommend it for anyone. There's always better options. And so, again, I think when you can just figure out some decent brands, it makes it really easy, whether you're doing online shopping or you're in the supermarket and you're pretty time poor, just to start bringing in some of the foods that you would typically have that contain some of these ingredients. So from here, I would encourage you, while this is fresh, even if you only have 5 minutes, go and open up your fridge and your pantry and run your eye through, count the ingredients, look at the sugar and the salt, and have a little look at how many numbers are on your different foods. And as I said, just start a shopping list. And next time you're doing an online shopping order or at the shops, be aware of what you're trying to replace. So as I said, it could be barbecue sauce, tomato sauce, your dried apple, whatever it is. And it might take you 1-2 months to switch to more of a simple, easy, healthy, additive-free swaps. But it doesn't, 1 or 2 months that's nothing. Do you know what I mean? And like my situation with the wrap bread, in the end, I was really happy to throw them out, because one wrap containing that many additives, it's not food. It's not nourishing. It's taking away from my health. It's not adding anything. And I guess the last thing I want to say is you can only do what you can do. So like I said, do I let my kids eat like rubbish? Of course I do, every so often. That's fine. That's part of what I want them to experience. And I want them, hopefully, if they feel rubbish, I'll often say to them, well, how did that food make you feel? So maybe next time, instead of them having 3 slices of fairy bread, they might only have 1 or 2.
Olivia?
Yes.
What would you suggest would be a good swap for someone who likes soft drink or Red Bull type drinks? And second question, a good swap for someone who likes cereals like Sports Plus or Just Right, those kinds of foods.
So with the soft drink one, again, I would say if you're going to remove it, you want to replace it with something. My go-tos would be either a really good quality juice. I know it still contains sugar, but we are not average people. We are athletes here and we move our bodies. So I would be going with something even as simple as a nudie juice. Definitely if it's an adult or even a kid, you can do like 100 mils of juice and 100 mils of water. So I would start slowly and reduce soft drink, bring in another beverage, coconut water, a good quality full juice. As I said, something as simple as a nudie juice. I'm a big fan of kombucha. Kombucha's fizzy, so it's a really good replacement for someone that normally likes soft drink. Kombucha is just fermented tea. And again, kombucha normally, they actually add in a bunch of sugar into a green tea or black tea. But the natural bugs, the natural microbes actually chew on that sugar. They feed off that sugar, which is why it becomes fermented. And it becomes a low sugar drink. So as I said, you don't want to go cold turkey because it's not going to work and it's not sustainable. Reduce the soft drink, bring in another option, coconut water, herbal tea, good quality iced tea that you make at home, juice, even play around with adding in a bit of water, or if you want something fizzy, do a sparkling water and, I don't know, add in some fresh oranges or lemons, or even slice up some strawberries and put in sparkling water, or a kombucha or something like that. Bas, what was the other question?
It was about cereal.
Good one. So my rule, that sugar, the 0.2 I put here with so many cereals are just, that my two issues with them is they're just really high in carbs. And there's nothing wrong with carbs, but there's no protein. So something like your Wheat Bix, there is nothing inherently wrong with Wheat Bix. Wheat Bix is fine, but there's no protein. There's none at all. One of my kids' favorite foods to eat is Wheat Bix. They have Wheat Bix like, I don't know, once every 6 weeks at my parents' house, and it's the world's biggest deal. But they know that if they get Wheat Bix, they have to have it with chia seeds sprinkled on top, because chia seeds is the protein. And remember, protein's what keeps you feeling satisfied. It's what's, if they don't have chia seeds with their Wheat Bix, or if you just ate a big bowl of porridge, right, and some honey, and there's nothing else in there, there's no nuts, there's no seeds, there's no protein, you're going to be hungry within a couple of hours. So with your cereals, as I said, it's more about what you're actually going to add into. You want to be adding into your cereals protein, because otherwise you're just having a whole lot of sugar. And the second thing is, pay attention to how much sugar is in there. This is my rule of thumb. You want less than 15 grams of sugar per 100 grams. So look on the back of any cereal product. Never pay attention to the per serve size. The per serve sizes are usually really stingy. They're often like 25 or 30 grams, and that's like, no one does that unless you're 4. So don't even worry about the serving size. Just read the per 100 grams. You want less than 15 grams. So I find the Carmen's fruit-free muesli is just a good standard option. Otherwise, there's a really good brand, your Farmer Joe. And again, it's not cheap, but you're paying for real food. So if you want your cheaper cereal, you want to eat less of it and you want to bulk it up with some fruit like berries and get some protein in like nuts or seeds, or even better, switch to a lower sugar option. The third and final option is to make your own cereal or granola. Guys, it's so easy. If you've never done it, you're in for a treat. And saying that like you don't have time, honestly, it's 5 minutes. There is not even chopping that's involved. All you need is some oats or quinoa flakes. You can then add in any nuts or seeds. You always want to add in some type of fat. I'm a huge fan of olive oil. You can add in a bit of coconut oil or ghee and throw in some cinnamon. So I've got a really good granola recipe on my website and in my Instagram feed. And as I said, it's less than 5 minutes, ingredients on a bowl, pop it in the oven. It does contain sugar, it's natural sugar, but it's high in protein, high in fat. So it's going to sustain you for longer periods of time. And again, it's going to work out cheaper economically because you're going to be healthier for way longer.
Okay, one more question. Salad dressings that you buy from the shop, they always have a lot of preservatives and colorings in them. What's a good swap out for that?
Totally. So that is so right. So with dressings, just read the ingredient list. You'll see numbers. Probably my go-to would be the Cobra Estate has the olive oil with lemon. It's lemon infused. That is so simple. So you can use something like that. Otherwise, I would always just go with olive oil with lemon juice, and you can either add in a bit of apple cider vinegar and garlic or something like a balsamic vinegar. I'm not a huge fan of even buying them, only because it's so overpriced. I don't think it's even worth your money. Making good quality salad dressings at home is as simple as having olive oil as your base. And as I said, you can use a squeeze of fresh orange juice, lime juice, lemon juice, pepper, a little bit of salt, and then something to bring it together, like a Dijon mustard, tahini, something like that. What I can even do is I'll share onto my Facebook page, and then Baz can share it with you guys, my standard kind of go-to salad dressing. It's a honey mustard salad dressing, and we would have it every second time we have salad. Cool. Does anyone else have any questions? I hope this has been of value, guys. Thank you so much for joining. If you think of any questions, because it often happens too when this is over, or if I feel like I've missed anything or I want to add anything more, I'm going to include it and a couple of these resources, as I said, what I'll actually do is I'll include it in our Facebook page, and otherwise please comment in the Facebook page, as I said, and I can answer any questions that kind of pop up over the next few days. But screenshot this. This is all you need so that you guys can start making your own healthy swaps. You don't need me. You don't need a nutritionist telling you what brand to get. You need just to become really confident with reading nutrition labels, which you can totally do. You don't need apps. You don't need a degree. You just need knowledge, don't you, really? It's just knowing how to figure it out, because it's a bit of a maze. And as I said, stick to that outside aisle of the supermarket. That's a hot tip.
Hey, Olivia, one more question.
Yeah.
For someone who likes to cook sweet things the old school way with white refined sugar, what is a way for them to make their sweets more healthy?
Coconut sugar is a good swap. It's still sugar. So I guess, I don't know how to put this correctly, but the body doesn't necessarily, it still metabolizes it the same way. So I just want you to imagine, if a recipe calls for 1 cup of caster sugar and you use 1 cup of coconut sugar, just if you overconsume it, your butt doesn't know the difference that it's coconut sugar. It's still might sit, it might end up on your butt, if that makes sense. So keep in mind that sugar is sugar. But what you want to do is, I find coconut sugar is a great way, and even better, any recipe that calls for sugar, I often halve it. So if a recipe called for 1 cup of sugar, I often would get away with adding in half a cup of sugar. Even if it's caster sugar, you're having a heck of a lot less than it. So, but coconut sugar is a good replacement 1-for-1. But I'm also a really big fan of honey. Honey, yes, it's a natural sugar, and again, you don't want to overconsume it, but it contains a lot of beautiful antimicrobial, antibacterial, immune supportive properties and minerals. So think of caster sugar as nil. You're not really getting any health benefits from it. But if you want to get the sugary taste, like Baz said, I'd actually be going for, where you can, honey, because you're still going to get the sugary hit, but you're going to get the benefits. And as I said, you'd never need as much sugar as the recipe calls for. And you can train yourself to have less sugar. As you reduce your sugar intake, you will naturally want less sugar. And we know this, the bugs, the microbes that live in your gut, when you change what you eat, they start changing how they behave. And the bugs that live in your gut have a huge impact on your appetite and sugar cravings. And so keep in mind too that we aren't led by our sugar cravings. We're kind of in control to a point where, when we make lots of small changes can have a really profound impact. So as I said, you don't need to be perfect, but every meal is an opportunity to move towards optimal health or to kind of stay where you are. And so just kind of imagine that. And as I said, I always talk about the 90-10 approach. So 90% of the time, I encourage you to eat whole foods, eat real food. 10% of the time, eat soul foods. And soul foods are foods that nourish you emotionally. So, you might want to have your sweet thing with a bit of caster sugar or coconut sugar, or you might want to have your glass of wine or your piece of toast or whatever, and that's fine. But the 90-10 is kind of where it's at for you to maintain optimal health, get results with training, support energy, hormones, etc. That was a long-winded answer to your original question. Okie dokie. Well, as I said, I'm going to stop recording here, but any further questions, pop them in our group. As I said, I'm going to add in a few of these little handy resources into the group Facebook page. But I'm here. If you need me, you will find me. You can reach out to me through Facebook. I'm also on Instagram. You can access me through my website. So feel free to touch base with me at any point, because I'm here to help. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
My pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
My pleasure.
Thanks.